technique des gens de la santé publique. Vous allez entendre ce matin Dr. Supriya Sharma, conseillère médicale en chef à Santé Canada, Dr. Marc Berthiaume, directeur du Bureau des sciences médicales de Santé Canada, et Dr. Howard Njoo, sous-administrateur en chef de la santé publique du Canada. Donc, on va commencer avec quelques allocutions et après, il y aura une ronde de questions. Déjà, je vous inviterai à lever votre main, s'il vous plaît, si vous avez des questions à poser, là, les gens qui suivent tout ça par Zoom. So, anybody who has a question, I invite you to raise your virtual hand, please. We will start now with the allocutions. Dr. Sharma.
Good morning. Bonjour. Thank you for joining us. Today I'm here to talk to you about Health Canada's authorization of the first bivalent COVID-19 vaccine in Canada. Health Canada has authorized an updated version of the Moderna Spikevax COVID-19 vaccine for adults 18 years of age and older. And this vaccine is known as a bivalent vaccine because it targets two coronavirus strains, the original SARS-CoV-2 virus from 2019 and the Omicron BA1 variant. After completing a thorough and independent scientific review of the evidence, Health Canada has determined that this bivalent Moderna Spikevax booster has met the requirements for the safety and the effectiveness from the regulations. This marks a milestone in Canada's response to this pandemic. So today, what I'd like to talk about is what a bivalent vaccine is and does, and why it's important in the next phase of the pandemic. Up to now, all authorized COVID-19 vaccines in Canada have targeted one strain of the virus, the original SARS-CoV-2 virus from 2019. These vaccines have served us well over time and continue to be very effective at preventing what matters most, severe illness, hospitalization, and death. With billions of vaccines administered around the world, we now have more knowledge about how vaccines respond to new variants. And with the Omicron variant now circulating, we know that the existing vaccines can be less effective or wane over time. One of the advantages of the mRNA vaccines is that they can be adapted relatively quickly to new variants, and scientists and vaccine manufacturers are updating COVID-19 vaccines by adding other ingredients which specifically target the circulating virus strains. For example, each dose of the new bivalent Moderna Spikevax vaccine contains 50 micrograms of mRNA, with 25 micrograms targeting the original SARS-CoV-2 virus strain and 25 micrograms specifically targeting the Omicron BA1 subvariant. It's essentially two vaccines in one. Health Canada's decision to authorize this new bivalent vaccine was based on data from a clinical trial that showed that a booster dose of the bivalent Moderna vaccine triggers a strong immune response against both the Omicron BA1 and the original SARS-CoV-2 virus strains. While the vaccine was designed to more specifically target the Omicron BA1 subvariant, we know that this vaccine also generates a good immune response against the Omicron subvariants BA4 and BA5 that have more recently emerged. This booster is also intended to extend the durability of protection. This will help us face the next waves. From a safety point of view, this new vaccine is similar to the previous approved Moderna Spikevax booster with the same mild adverse events that resolved quickly. Health Canada is currently reviewing a submission from Pfizer-BioNTech for a bivalent vaccine that also targets the original SARS-CoV-2 strain as well as the Omicron BA1 subvariant. To ensure we have as many options as possible for dealing with current and future variants, we have reached out to both Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna to request that they file submissions for vaccines specifically targeting the BA4 and BA5 subvariants. We are waiting confirmation on their plans, including submission timelines. We know that the virus that causes COVID-19 is changing and mutating constantly. The virus will always be one step ahead vaccines to combat the effects of COVID-19. And Health Canada, as Canada's regulator, will continue to prioritize submissions for new treatments and vaccines to help protect Canadians from the effects of COVID-19. We've come a long way since the start of the pandemic. In addition to Canada's announcement about the bivalent vaccine, Health Canada has authorized the original COVID-19 vaccines for all Canadians 6 months of age and older, and we have approved original booster vaccines for individuals as young as 5 years of age. In summary, vaccination continues to be one of the most effective ways to protect ourselves against COVID-19 and is one of the most important ways Health Canada is helping to keep Canadians safe and healthy. Dr. Njoo will provide an update on NACI guidance, but before that, we will turn to Dr. Berthiaume. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Bonjour, je vous remercie de votre présence. Je vais aujourd'hui vous parler de l'autorisation accordée par Santé Canada au premier vaccin bivalent contre la COVID-19 au Canada. Après avoir réalisé un examen scientifique approfondi et indépendant des données probantes, Santé Canada a autorisé une nouvelle version du vaccin Spikevax de Moderna contre la COVID-19 pour les adultes de 18 ans et plus. Ce vaccin est appelé un vaccin bivalent car il et le variant Omicron BA1. Cela marque une étape importante dans la réponse du Canada à la pandémie. Je vais donc vous parler aujourd'hui de ce qu'est un vaccin bivalent, de ce qu'il fait et de la raison pour laquelle il jouera un rôle important au Canada, ciblé à la souche du virus SARS-CoV-2 initial de 2019. Ces vaccins nous ont bien servi au fil du temps et continuent d'être très efficaces pour prévenir les maladies graves, les hospitalisations et les décès. Grâce aux milliards de doses qui ont été administrées à travers le monde, nous disposons désormais d'informations sur la façon dont les vaccins agissent contre les nouveaux variants. Dans le cas du variant Omicron qui circule actuellement, nous savons que l'efficacité des vaccins existants peut être moindre ou s'estomper avec le temps. L'un des avantages des vaccins à ARN messager est qu'ils peuvent être adaptés relativement rapidement pour agir contre les Ça nous aidera à affronter les prochaines vagues. Sur le plan de l'innocuité, ce nouveau vaccin est semblable au Spikevax de Moderna précédemment approuvé et il est associé aux mêmes effets indésirables légers qui s'estompent rapidement. Santé Canada examine actuellement une présentation de Pfizer-BioNTech pour un vaccin bivalent ciblant également la souche initiale du virus SARS-CoV-2 et le sous-variant Omicron BA1. Afin de nous assurer que nous ayons le plus d'options possibles pour combattre les variants actuels et futurs, nous avons demandé à Pfizer-BioNTech et à Moderna de présenter des demandes d'autorisation pour des vaccins ciblant spécifiquement les sous-variants BA4 et BA5. Nous attendons la confirmation de leur plan, y compris les délais de présentation. Nous savons que le virus qui cause la COVID-19 subit constamment des modifications et des mutations. C'est prévisible. Le virus a une longueur d'avance sur nous, mais l'écart se rétrécit. Les scientifiques du monde entier travaillent sans relâche à la mise au point de nouveaux traitements et vaccins pour lutter contre les effets de la COVID-19. Et Santé Canada, en tant qu'organisme de réglementation du Canada, continuera d'accorder la priorité aux présentations de nouveaux traitements et vaccins afin d'aider à protéger la population canadienne contre les effets de la COVID-19. Nous avons fait beaucoup de progrès depuis le début de la pandémie. En plus de l'annonce d'aujourd'hui concernant le vaccin bivalent, Santé Canada a autorisé l'utilisation des vaccins contre la souche d'origine de la COVID-19 chez tous les Canadiens âgés de 6 mois ou plus et nous avons approuvé des doses de rappel de vaccins dès l'âge de 5 ans. En résumé, la vaccination demeure l'un des moyens les plus efficaces pour se protéger contre la COVID-19 et c'est une façon importante pour Santé Canada de contribuer à la sécurité et à la santé des Canadiennes et des Canadiens. Je passe maintenant la parole au Dr Njoo, qui présentera une mise à jour sur les lignes directrices du Comité consultatif national de l'immunisation et sur l'utilisation des vaccins bivalents comme dose de rappel cet automne. Merci.
Merci, Dr. Berthiaume. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Vaccination continues to be one of the most effective ways to protect against serious illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. Health Canada's announcement of the authorization of Moderna's bivalent COVID-19 booster vaccine is indeed a major milestone. It provides people in Canada with an updated vaccine option to address the evolving virus that causes COVID-19. The bivalent vaccine is anticipated to provide stronger and broader protection, including against the Omicron variants that have been circulating. Since vaccine protection decreases over time, it is important to stay up to date by getting your first vaccine doses and booster doses as recommended. Booster doses are recommended for all eligible populations. If it has been 6 months since your last dose or 6 months since being infected with COVID-19, get another booster dose. This is especially important if you are at high risk for severe illness from COVID-19. In some provinces and territories, you may be offered a booster dose as soon as 3 months based on local circumstances, needs, and epidemiology. Earlier this month, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, or NACI, provided recommendations for booster doses in preparation for the fall to better protect against an anticipated increase of COVID-19 activity during these months. Today, NACI has updated this guidance to reflect the authorization of bivalent vaccines. For adults 18 years of age and older, NACI recommends that a bivalent COVID-19 booster vaccine should be offered as a booster. If the bivalent booster is not readily available, an original mRNA COVID-19 vaccine should be offered to ensure timely protection. It is important to be aware that both the original and bivalent COVID-19 vaccines are effective as a booster. For adolescents 12 to 17 years of age with moderately or severe immunocompromising conditions and or who have biological or social risk factors that place them at high risk of severe outcomes from COVID-19, based on expert opinion and the data in adults, NACI also recommends that the bivalent vaccine may be offered to this population. Individuals who are eligible for boosters this fall, especially those at increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19, should not delay their planned vaccination in anticipation of a bivalent vaccine. Anyone choosing to delay a booster dose in anticipation of a new vaccine should carefully consider their individual risk. We are in close contact with provincial and territorial counterparts and understand they will be rolling out fall vaccination programs shortly. In fact, some vaccination campaigns have already begun. In terms of the availability, based on provincial and territorial projections, there will be enough supply of the Moderna Spikevax bivalent COVID-19 vaccine in Canada for everyone 18 years of age and older this fall and winter. Canada is well positioned to offer a robust bivalent booster campaign, and shipments will begin arriving over the coming days and months. Please check your provincial, territorial, or local health authority website for information on when the vaccine will be available in your area. The vast majority of Canadians have received 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine, and many adults have received a booster. However, we know that protection from a vaccine or infection that was more than 6 months ago is not enough as COVID-19 immunity decreases over time. Staying up to date on vaccinations, including with the booster dose, will provide the best protection against COVID-19 illness as we head into the fall. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. Good
On va
morning,
maintenant
everyone.
passer.
La vaccination demeure l'un des moyens les plus efficaces de se protéger contre les maladies graves, l'hospitalisation et le décès causés par le COVID-19. Santé Canada a annoncé l'autorisation du vaccin de rappel bivalent contre la COVID-19 de Moderna. Il s'agit là d'une étape importante. Il offre aux Canadiens et Canadiennes une option vaccin à jour pour se protéger devant l'évolution du virus qui cause la COVID-19. On prévoit que le vaccin bivalent assurera une protection plus robuste et élargie, notamment contre les variants d'Omicron actuellement en circulation. Étant donné que la protection vaccinale diminue avec le temps, il est important de rester à jour en obtenant vos premières doses de vaccin et vos doses de rappel selon les recommandations. Les doses de rappel sont recommandées pour toutes les populations admissibles. Vous êtes invité à recevoir une autre dose de rappel 6 mois après votre dernière dose ou 6 mois après avoir été infecté par la COVID-19. Cette dose de rappel est particulièrement important pour les personnes qui sont susceptibles aux maladies graves en raison de la COVID-19. Dans certaines provinces et certains territoires, on peut vous offrir un rappel dès 3 mois selon les circonstances locales, les besoins et l'épidémiologie. Tout a formulé des recommandations sur les doses de rappel en prévision de l'automne, afin de mieux protéger la population contre une recrudescence anticipée de la COVID-19 au cours de cette période. Aujourd'hui, le CCNE a mis à jour ses lignes directrices pour tenir compte de l'autorisation des vaccins bivalents. Pour les adultes de 18 ans et plus, le vaccin de rappel. Si le vaccin bivalent n'est pas facilement accessible, un vaccin à ARN messager d'origine contre la COVID-19 devrait être proposé pour assurer une protection en temps voulu. Il est important de savoir que les vaccins pour les adolescents de 12 à 17 ans présentant une déficience immunitaire de modérée à sévère ou présentant des facteurs de risque biologiques ou sociaux qui les exposent et les données recueillies dans la population adulte, le CCNE recommande que le vaccin bivalent leur soit offert. Les personnes admissibles à des rappels cet automne, en particulier celles qui sont susceptibles de présenter des effets graves si elles sont atteintes de la COVID-19, ne devraient pas retarder leur vaccination prévue pour attendre le vaccin bivalent. Les personnes qui choisissent de retarder l'administration d'une dose individuelle que ce choix peut comporter. Nous sommes en étroite communication avec nos homologues provinciaux et territoriaux et nous croyons savoir qu'ils mettront rapidement en œuvre des programmes de vaccination pour l'automne. En fait, certaines campagnes de vaccination ont déjà commencé. En ce qui concerne la disponibilité cet automne et cet hiver, selon les projections des provinces et des territoires, il y aura suffisamment de doses de vaccins bivalents contre la COVID-19 de Moderna Spikevax au Canada pour toutes les personnes de 18 ans et plus. Le Canada est bien placé pour offrir une solide campagne de rappel du vaccin bivalent. Les commandes commenceront à arriver au cours des prochains jours et des prochains mois. Veuillez consulter le site web de votre autorité sanitaire provinciale, territoriale ou locale pour savoir à quel moment le vaccin sera disponible dans votre région. La grande majorité des Canadiens et Canadiennes ont reçu 2 doses d'un vaccin contre la COVID-19 et de nombreux adultes ont reçu un vaccin de rappel. Cependant, nous savons que la protection qui confère un vaccin ou une infection survenue il y a plus de 6 mois n'est pas suffisante car l'immunité à la COVID-19 diminue au fil du temps. À l'approche de l'automne, le maintien à jour de la vaccination, y compris le vaccin de rappel, offrira la meilleure protection contre la COVID-19. Merci. Thank you. Miigwech.
Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions. Ce sera une question et une question de suivi. Je vous invite à lever votre main si vous voulez poser une question. We will start with Adam Miller from CBC News.
My question. So Canada hasn't procured any BA5 or BA4 targeted bivalent vaccines or received submission for Health Canada approval from Pfizer or Moderna for those vaccines, despite the fact that the FDA approved them in the US this week. Dr. Sharma, you mentioned Canada had reached out to Moderna and Pfizer about the BA4 and BA5 targeted vaccines, and you're waiting for confirmation on their plans. Why was Canada unable to acquire vaccines that target the dominant bivalent vaccines instead?
Sure, I'll start with respect to the regulatory side of things, and then we'll turn over to Dr. Njoo. So in terms of the BA.4/5 bivalent Omicron vaccines, we are expecting a submission as early as next week from Pfizer. We have had discussions with Moderna as well, and are expecting them to also file within the next 2 weeks. We made a decision, as did a number of different regulators, to accept and consider the BA.1 bivalent updated vaccine, making sure that we have options. So we know that these updated vaccines are important to be able to give that optimal maintenance of immunity against the Omicron strain. We know that there is clinical information for the BA.1, and we also know that there is data that shows that it does have effect against BA.4 and BA.5. So the BA.1 vaccine is a good option in terms of getting a booster, providing a stronger and broader immunity, as well as some protection against the BA.4. So we wanted to make sure that we had that in-house, and we had that reviewed. And as you noted, we will be getting the other submissions, and we'll review those to make sure that we have as many options as we can for Canadians.
Hey, thanks. And this is Dr. Njoo. What I can say that certainly it's good news that we have a range of booster vaccines available in Canada. And to Dr. Sharma's point, when you look at the bivalent vaccine, what's different? All of the vaccines we currently have available still do a very good job in protecting against severe consequences against COVID-19. But as we've seen with the Omicron wave, certainly is an element of what we call immune or vaccine escape from the Omicron variants. And so the fact that we have a bivalent vaccine here in Canada, based on the original sort of variant of Omicron, is sufficiently different compared to the we're not alone in Canada. Look at many other countries. For example, in Europe, they've also authorized the bivalent vaccine with the BA.1 variant. Looking forward, certainly as Dr. Sharma indicated, the evidence we have to date shows that the bivalent vaccine with BA.1 offers good protections against BA.4 and 5. Certainly, as the situation evolves, we'll have to look at the evidence and see what happens, as they say, in real-world effectiveness. What might be any differences, and those studies are obviously ongoing in terms of looking at a more specific BA.1 bivalent vaccine as compared to BA.4 or 5. But I think at this point we're very comfortable, and I think certainly with our provincial territorial colleagues, we're very keen to start rolling out the vaccine campaigns offering a bivalent vaccine.
Okay, great.
Do you
Just
have
one
a follow-up,
follow-up.
Adam?
Yeah. So you mentioned that the original vaccines, the ancestral strain vaccines, could still be offered as a booster. That was in the NACI guidance, and you mentioned that as well. That is still available to Canadians if they can't get a bivalent vaccine. What is the if you could just walk me through sort of the longer term plan with these updated vaccines? I mean, we've got BA.1 bivalent vaccines coming and just approved today. You mentioned BA.4 and BA.5 vaccines. You're seeking a submission on those in the next couple of weeks. What happens to the original vaccines and then the BA.1 vaccines once the BA.4 and 5 targeted vaccine formulation updated bivalent vaccines? In the future, will BA.4 and BA.5 targeted vaccines replace the BA.1 targeted vaccines? If you could kind of walk me through what your long-term public health goals are with these updated vaccines, that would be great.
Okay, I can certainly start from a public health perspective. We understand obviously the virus continues to evolve, and we need to continue to evolve with it in terms of our vaccine programs and obviously the vaccines themselves. What I can say is that the original, I would say, the COVID-19 vaccines have certainly served. There is that element of vaccine escape that we need to be mindful of, and kudos to the companies that have continued to do the quote work in the lab and otherwise to be able to offer what we now call the bivalent vaccines. You're right. Moving forward, and I don't want to draw a strict analogy to like influenza, but having that initial base of sort of the influenza vaccine, and in this case the COVID-19 vaccines, what we see is that over time, depending on sort of how variants evolve and so on, we can certainly see that down the road, it might be a case that on a whatever regular basis or so, we might be changing, quote, the formulation of the types of strains in the COVID-19 vaccines based on what's happening both here in Canada and around the world. So this is, I think, a major step in acknowledging that the COVID-19, let's say the SARS-CoV-2 virus continues to evolve, and certainly because of the Omicron variant being sort of the big sort of a change that has had an impact in terms of vaccine effectiveness because of its immune escape properties. That's why we're offering, or that's why the companies have developed the bivalent vaccine. Once you start getting to a sort of the subvariants, so BA1, 4, 5, certainly I would say that at the heart of it, sort of the original sort of the BA1, variant, sort of indicative of Omicron. Omicron is different enough from the original strain that, as we've seen from the evidence to date, it offers good cross protection across the range of the other subvariants for Omicron, for example, BA4-5. And I think we need to be careful. It can't just be a matter of sort of trying to catch up with what might be the latest circulating virus. You need to look at the whole of what's happening here in Canada, around the world, looking at very I would say in depth at sort of the changes in the virus, not just quote an individual subvariant, but maybe what might be a major change, be in the spike protein or other factors that might lead towards having let's say another sort of formulation of the vaccine. So that's what I would say is sort of the big picture moving forward. Recognizing that the virus will continue to evolve, and as such, the vaccines will also continue to evolve to keep up in offering Canadians and others around the world the best possible protection.
On va continuer avec Émilie Bergeron de la presse canadienne.
Oui, bonjour, un peu dans la même veine de la question qui vient d'être posée. Avec ce nouveau vaccin et aussi les vaccins qui vont venir, qui vont cibler le BA4, le BA4 et le BA5, oui, les doses du vaccin de la souche d'origine, craignez-vous qu'on n'arrive pas à les écouler et qu'est-ce qui va se passer avec ces doses-là? Est-ce que vous craignez qu'on doive jeter une quantité importante de vaccins qui vont demeurer inutilisés?
Ça, c'est une question actuellement pour les provinces et territoires, mais je pense pour l'instant, avec les vaccins ils ont dans leur possession, et on continue à offrir une dose de rappel avec les vaccins. Les vaccins ils ont actuellement, mais avec l'autorisation d'un vaccin bivalent et aussi avec les livraisons des vaccins bivalents aux provinces et territoires. C'est sûr que les provinces et territoires vont peut-être modifier le programme de vaccination. Je pense, selon les recommandations de CCNI, je pense que c'est peut-être le premier choix, peut-être que plus tard, d'offrir un vaccin bivalent, mais ce n'est pas disponible. C'est toujours une bonne option d'offrir comme on dit, un vaccin original pour se protéger, mais on verra au futur. C'est sûr avec l'approvisionnement et aussi peut-être la disponibilité des vaccins bivalents que peut-être on va plus utiliser.
Vous avez dit, Dr. Njoo, que les premières livraisons du vaccin bivalent vont arriver bientôt. Est-ce qu'elles vont être accessibles largement? Combien de temps pourrait s'écouler là, avant qu'elles soient là? Leur rendez-vous pour une dose de rappel.
Merci pour la question. Ce que je peux vous dire aujourd'hui, c'est que oui, je pense que la semaine prochaine, on va commencer déjà avec les livraisons en provinces et territoires. Je pense dans l'ensemble, on a un contrat avec Moderna pour, je pense, 12 millions de doses. Ça c'est beaucoup. Et je pense que la plupart de 12 millions vont même être capables de livrer pendant la prochaine. On est déjà en mois de septembre pour peut-être d'ici à la fin du mois de septembre. Donc, je pense qu'on est dans une bonne position et je pense que les provinces et territoires ils commencent maintenant avec leur planification et leur campagne de vaccination pour offrir les vaccins bivalents aux populations admissibles.
Laura Usman, CP.
Good morning, doctors. Thanks for taking our questions. I wanted to go back to those conversations about pursuing the BA.1 vaccine versus the BA.4 and BA. Expecting that we went straight to the BA.4.5, that there may be delays in getting it, for example, and that's why we pursued the BA.1. Can you just kind of explain what those conversations were like?
I could start, and certainly I would also defer to my regulatory colleagues. Certainly, part of the sort of the complexity is sort of the timing, et cetera, of the actual submissions to Health Canada for the bivalent vaccines, the BA1 and 4 and 5, and Dr. Sharma and Dr. Berthiaume have already are pronounced on that. So that's one thing. We can't really act if the company hasn't even put forward a submission to Health Canada. Having said that, certainly based on discussions with the manufacturer in terms of their capacity capability in terms of the contracts we have for vaccines, that's all part of a mix. And you're right, it's a very I would say complex dynamic, but certainly from what we've seen and the evidence we have to date, and similar to many other countries, for example, in Europe, we're very comfortable with the fact that the bivalent vaccine based on the BA1, which is really sort of the original Omicron variant, is sufficiently different from the original strain that offers that quote additional substantial benefit in terms of protecting an individual against COVID-19. Once again, to the subvariants and how that may ebb and flow, and who knows what the next subvariant maybe of Omicron or a completely new a variant that might emerge in the coming days, weeks, or months. Those are things that you have to take into consideration in terms of, hey, what do you have in hand versus thinking of what might quote potentially happen in the future. So I think at the end of the day, we're very comfortable with the fact we have a good bivalent vaccine, and the fact is that, as we've said at the get-go, if it's been 6 and get a booster dose.
Perhaps to add a bit, all along the pandemic, as we were dealing with variants of concerns, companies were starting to look at whether or not they should adapt their vaccines. So basically, every variant of concern that's come along, at some point in time, the companies have developed those different vaccines. They didn't end up going into testing them in terms of the clinical trials because we didn't actually need them at that point in time. We were still seeing, I think, very good and we knew that they were developing a BA1 vaccine as well as BA4-5. And internationally, in general, there's given the certain one group of people the bivalent vaccine involving the BA1 strain, and another group just the original strain. And we had that data, and it was shown to be quite effective and expected to work against Omicron. And because the BA1 strain, it's still Omicron. So there's more similarities with the BA4-5 strain than it is with the original strain, that would be a good option. And a lot of countries have gone that way, have decided that they would pursue the BA1. It's not mutually exclusive. We'll continue to look at other options. But, we were faced with the fact that we were looking at a lot of provinces and territories that were going to be starting their campaigns, their fall campaigns, some as early as August, and we wanted to make sure that there were options that available. So it's based on what we know about the vaccines, what we know about the circulating viruses, how much information we had in terms of the clinical data and the potential availability of the vaccine. So all of that went into making our decisions. And again, it's always based on having options for Canadians. And as everyone's been saying, you know, these booster doses are important, especially if you're more than 6 months out of your last booster dose, especially if you haven't had COVID-19, to make sure that you're optimizing your protection. And then for other people that maybe have had their more recent boosters or have had COVID-19, there's recommendations as well. But it's really important to make sure that everyone is up to date. It's one layer of protection. You know, there's other layers of protection as well. And so that's why we're very excited about the announcement today. And we want to make sure that people go out and get their boosters.
Thank you. Do you get the sense that now you have one of these bivalent vaccine approvals under your belt, and the manufacturers seem to know what they're doing with the bivalent vaccines, that approvals will be able to come more quickly?
I mean, certainly we're learning as we go through this pandemic, as everyone else is. You know, we're still dealing the evidence that's provided supports the use of the vaccines in the most safe and effective manner. But definitely, you know, as we're having discussions with our international counterparts, as we know more about the science, we're applying that as we go. So all of the different the vaccines that we've looked at, all of the different indications in terms of changes to the age groups, what we know about the science, where, you know, just recently there was more information around how a previous illness potentially with BA1 gives you immunity against BA4-5. So all that goes into the process. And as we have more familiarity with the virus and with the vaccine,
On va continuer avec Olivier Perron-Boissé de TVA.
Oui, bonjour. Donc, j'aimerais savoir, c'est quoi l'amélioration, peut-être pour Dr Berthiaume, l'amélioration en pourcentage de la protection démontrée par le vaccin bivalent chez les humains? En fait, comment la compagnie a démontré la valeur ajoutée du vaccin bivalent, Dr Berthiaume?
Certainement. Alors, il y a eu des discussions sur le plan international pour